My name is Evan Peacock. I have been asked to introduce your second speaker for the evening. His name is Tom Peacock. Second year from Boston, Massachusetts, a reformed consultant. Coincidentally, also my husband, the father of this baby who is aggressively ignoring his eviction notice. We made it tonight. Our understanding of the theme for tonight's FuquaTalks was about the impact of community at large, which I think is a wonderful way to kind of encapsulate what Tom will share with you, certainly what Beth just shared. In that vein, I think what Tom will tell you is a good testament to the importance of acknowledging community and the impact that it can have, for recognizing its importance, and for the vulnerability it takes to raise your hand and say, I need help. So I won't take up any more of his time. I'm proud to introduce to you Tom Peacock. He's got props too.
I also somehow convinced Evan to let me play golf this weekend. So I told the baby to just stay in there for a few more minutes because the NBA Masters needs me. I'm super excited to be here tonight. Super excited to share my story with you guys. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a Fuqua alum who graduated about 10 years ago, and she told me that before she went to sleep at night while she was at Fuqua, she used to cry. Her friends used to cry. They used the word miserable to describe their experience here at Fuqua. And what I wanted to do tonight was share with you some of the struggles that I faced over the last year, just to reassure you that if you're somebody that's struggling, you're not alone, as well as to challenge all of you to think a little bit deeper about who you are as a person, and challenge you guys to get to know each other a little bit better. A little bit about me. Before I came to Fuqua, my guiding light was money. I made all my decisions based off money. I studied mechanical engineering while I was at undergrad up in Boston, and chose not to go into engineering because I didn't find it lucrative enough. So instead I went to work at Accenture. I worked at Accenture for about 7 years and literally grinded every day. I was chasing the next raise, I was chasing the next promotion. I'd get the promotion and then I would just be on to the next one. Literally wouldn't even be satisfied with the promotion. And the reason I was chasing after money and chasing after status and chasing after titles was because growing up, there was a family that I knew whose father was a very senior partner at PwC and made a ton of money. They had material riches, more than you can imagine. They all drove BMWs. They went to Vail every weekend. They had $1 million Cape House. And I looked at this and it really sunk in, and it became my vision of what a good life was. This vision of material riches. And that's what I was seeking. That's why I was in consulting. That's what I was chasing after. Then I decided to go get an MBA. I decided to get an MBA to make more money. I didn't write that in my application, though. I probably wouldn't be standing here if I did. Instead, I wrote about my interest in health, my interest in wellness, my interest in nutrition. I really wanted to go work for a company like Under Armour, where you could look at products like this, like a Fitbit, and merge technology with health. That was really my driving interest. That's what I wrote about in my application. However, I got here at Fuqua and quickly got sucked into the masses. And I got sucked into the CPG masses. And the reason I got sucked in was because I heard, or I believed, that going into CPG was the best training ground to become a CEO. And I figured, well, if I become a CEO, I'll make more money. So there was that kind of guiding light of money. And so I went 100% in on CPG my first year. And ironically, I ended up at Hershey chocolate. If you know me, I don't eat candy. I don't know how I ended up there. And friends would say, like, Tom, how are you going to make this work? And I made up some excuse. I said, oh, it'll be fine. Like, it's not about the product, it's about the marketing. Anyway, I was lying to myself. So, plan is to go up to Hershey. So, over the summer, my plan was to head up there by myself. Evan was going to stay down here in Durham and work. I was going to go up to Hershey by myself. It was the first time I was ever living by myself, which I was super excited about. When I lived in that work...
Back up.
Just wait.
Anyway, in the world I lived in before I came to business school, I worked all the time. I worked on the weekends, and Evan would be like, oh, let's go hang out with friends, or we gotta go to this family event. And I would honestly get frustrated. Like, I wanted to work, I wanted to prepare for the next week. So I figured if I'm going up to Hershey, I'm gonna be by myself, there'll be no distractions. I can work all the time, I can work out all the time, I can eat whatever I want. Like, I had this massive need to control the environment 100%. And I didn't know it at the time, but this need to control was actually out of a fear of failure. Whenever we have a fear of failure, we tend to do one of two things. We avoid the situation altogether, or we over-control the situation. In my case, I often over-control. I'm working on the weekends to make sure that presentation is ready for the next week. I'm working 100% over the summer so I can get that offer, right? So that was my way of controlling for a fear of failure. And essentially, I created an environment that was essentially miserable. You all have probably seen an apartment in S9 or B9. Now remove all the furniture. Got that image? Now put a standing desk, rent a bed from a horrible, stiff rented bed, and that was my apartment. I had a couple kettlebells, I had a yoga mat, I had this super lonely, empty apartment. First 3 weeks, I ate standing up at my standing desk. That got a little bit old, so I went out and bought this. This was my chair that I sat in. That was the most comfortable thing I had when I got home. And eventually, this environment, the controlling environment, got a little bit old, and it actually caught up with me. On July 8th, I had my first panic attack, and anxiety itself was something that wasn't foreign to me. I experienced anxiety a little bit before I got to Fuqua, but for the most part, it was manageable, or I thought it was manageable. And then this episode happened middle of the summer, and essentially, like, things got completely out of control. Like, any type of small little worry would feel 100 times worse. Like, my mind was racing out of control. I started saying to myself, like, what the hell are you doing in Hershey, Pennsylvania? Why the hell are you at business school? Like, I was totally lost. And yeah, it was pretty miserable. And essentially what I did was, when I got back to Duke, I started seeing a therapist. And I started seeing a therapist twice a week. So since July, I've gone to a therapist about, I think, 45 times. And just a quick aside on therapy, interesting thing that I've realized is that we all think that therapy's bad. Like, if I tell you I go to therapy, people think, oh, you must have an issue. But if you go to the gym, people praise you to go to the gym. Like, therapy is just for your mind, whereas the gym is for your body. So just want to kind of put it out there that, like, there is absolutely nothing wrong with therapy. So if you go to therapy, there's nothing wrong with it. If you don't, you should go. It's great. I started to meditate. I've been meditating for 30 minutes every day for the last 8 months. Started to read books on psychology. I started to read books about Buddhism. I really started to lean on the Fuqua community and friends and family. I was actually tremendously nervous when I was coming back to Fuqua last year. Coming into C-Lead 2, sitting around 400 people, I just felt like extremely lonely, extremely by myself. Like, I had this experience. I didn't think anyone else could possibly relate. But as I started to tell people one by one, people would respond, oh, I've had a panic attack before, or oh, I take this medication, or oh, I dealt with anxiety for years. And I'm like, why the hell is anybody talking about this? Like, it's shocking. Like, all these people were telling me that they've experienced this before. A friend of mine had dealt with it. He recommended a book called The Misleading Mind, which I highly recommend, which was tremendously helpful. Professor Jeremy Petrenka, you guys may know him, he told us about his anxiety struggles in DIE. I went and talked to him. It was tremendously helpful. My wife was tremendously helpful. I literally would pace back and forth in that empty apartment in Hershey, like cursing out loud, like what the hell's going on. So she's been tremendous at listening to me over the last 8 months. So the partner community at Fuqua is tremendously valuable. Needless to say, I talked to a lot of people, I read a lot, and what I came away with was this whole new perspective of well-being. My perspective of success and well-being before was, I'm going to retire at 55, I'm going to drive a BMW, I'm going to travel to Vail every year. It was all these material riches, and I've redefined what success is in my mind, and it's much more holistic. It includes things like relationships, living in the moment, being engaged, and I can talk at length about that after if you're interested in, but I had this whole new view. The hard thing was that view was just on paper, and it's hard to kind of shift 30 years of thinking to a new way of thinking. And that's really where I struggled most of this year. As I got back to Fuqua and was thinking about re-recruiting, I was fighting kind of two sides of my mind. One side of my mind was try to make as much money as possible. The other mind was saying, you now care about relationships, you now care about your family, you now care about others. Yeah, it's selfish, I know. But it was a fight, and I want to tell you a little bit about that fight that I had. The biggest challenge was trying to decide where to live, right? So my wife becomes pregnant in August, and I just went through this episode, and now I'm starting to think about where I'm going to work full time, and I was completely distraught with having to choose a location based off other people's opinions. I thought I was coming into Fuqua, I'm paying $140,000, I should be able to chase any opportunity that's out there. That was my goal. I'm going to chase the money, whereas now I'm in a position where I need to think about the baby, I need to think about Evan's career, I need to think about the community that's surrounding us. And I learned just a tremendous and invaluable lesson while I was up in Hershey about how much those things matter. Those little distractions on the weekends make a difference. Those relationships make a difference. The family makes a difference. So it was really hard to accept that. Second thing I struggled with was this notion of becoming a CEO. I talked about that earlier with regards to CPG. And I didn't know why I wanted to become a CEO. I didn't know if it was financial reasons. I didn't know if it was some other reason. I didn't like. My friend said, "What do you want to be the CEO of?" And I was like, "I honestly have no idea." And I think it was to make money. But the other thing I struggled with was comparing myself to others. So my friends worked in investment banking over the summer. And they came back from the summer and they were saying, I was sitting in a boardroom and these board of directors were talking about an acquisition, and it was true business. He described it as true business. And I said to myself, like, that, I just didn't feel like a strong passion towards that. I didn't feel a strong interest towards that. So I started questioning, like, should I even be at business school? Like, I don't find that interesting. Like, why am I even here? Like, maybe I should just be an engineer after all. The other thing I struggled with was entrepreneurship. Like, I love entrepreneurship. I participated in P4E, but then I started thinking about what does entrepreneurship look like? And the image that came to mind was Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, if you look up Mark Cuban's story, when he was 28, he lived in a 3-bedroom apartment with 5 guys. His bedroom was the closet. And I thought, well, how am I going to convince my wife to live in a closet? So I didn't see that coming true. So I sort of had to write off entrepreneurship, like that's never going to happen in the future. Like I have a baby now. So that was a struggle. I really enjoyed my operations class. Some of you are probably like, what is wrong with him? But I enjoyed operations, and I started thinking about, well, maybe what does a career look like in operations? And somebody once told me to never take a job where you're not making revenue for a company, and I clung on to that. And my mind started to fight. Like, I'd be over here and be like, well, Tim Cook was in operations, you should go that path. And over here, you'd be like, well, you're not making money for the company, so I don't know what you're doing. So I fought with myself, like, what career path I was going down. I think consulting was probably the area I struggled with the most, because my friend's dad was a senior partner at PwC. I worked in consulting for 7 years. I was now going to take a job likely that was making less than I was making before business school. I honestly thought that being a consultant would be the best way to become a strategic thinker. So I had a really hard time walking away from that. Started convincing myself, like, I'm going to travel Monday through Thursday. Sorry, I'll be home on Thursday. But I was just lying to myself, like that was never going to work. As you can clearly see, like my mind was just all over the map. I was trying really hard to plot out how is the next role going to lead to my career 25 years from now? How is it going to lead to this life of riches that I had kind of dreamed up in my mind? And it was just everywhere. And as I think back on it, essentially, I went down a very inauthentic path at Hershey, and it was all based off this one-dimensional view of what I thought success was, which was money. And what I'll leave you with is a few things. Think a lot about, first, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to pick the perfect role. Like, we cannot control where we're going to end up 25 years from now. So try to live in the moment and don't put too much pressure on you in terms of what your next role is. Think about what your true passions are and try to identify what your shoulds are. So I had all these shoulds, like you should be a consultant, you should be this, you should be that. Like, is your should because Fuqua says it's your should? Is your should because you want to impress your friends? Is your should because your family says that's what you should do? Try to be true to yourself and don't live by someone else's should. Try to figure out, like, what is sustainable happiness for you. Like, for me, I thought it was money, but I've since realized it's broader than that. It's relationships, it's community. So figure out what it is for you. My whole thing with money and titles is there's always the next dollar, there's always the next title, there's always the next raise. I think you'll be very disappointed if that's just what you're seeking. And then lastly, think about the community and the environment you're putting yourself in. I was in literally an empty apartment over the summer at Hershey with no one to talk to. I literally had a panic attack and came home every night, sat in this damn chair with no one to talk to and just my own thoughts. So yeah, think about your loved ones when you pick your next job, you pick your subsequent job, because you don't want to end up in a chair with your own thoughts by yourself. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity. Thank you to Tanya, I don't think she's here, for nominating me. Thank you to Carol for organizing. Please come find me if you want to talk about this more. I could probably talk about this at length for many hours. So I appreciate it. Thank you guys.